Welcome back to the Floyd Memorial Library Podcast, a window into the soul of the North Fork of Long Island. We'll delve into the pulse of our community, its pressing issues, promising opportunities, and the rich stories that weave our shared history. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 85, we sit down with Nicolas Amara, bookseller and founder of Forked Road Press. Nicolas takes us through his journey from growing up in Southold and exploring his rich ancestry to his formative years in school, where his love for music and literature first emerged. We discuss his time in college in New York City, where he immersed himself in the publishing world and took on various roles. Nicolas also shares the story of how Forked Road Press came to be and his experiences selling books in New York City. Finally, we delve into why he chose to return to the North Fork and what he envisions for the future of the community he calls home. So I hope you enjoy episode 85 with Nicolas Amara. This episode was recorded July 24th, 2024. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So to start off, could you introduce yourself and give us a brief introduction about where you were born and raised?
So my name's Nicolas Amara. I'm from Southold. I guess technically I was born at Southampton Hospital, but I grew up in Southold.
That seems to be, some people say not Riverhead, but Southampton.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure.
I think that was kind of like the closest place that could happen at that point. Mm-hmm. But like my mom and dad lived in Southold, and
Mm-hmm.
So that's another crazy thing to think about, the harrowing, like hour-long car ride while someone's in labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of wacky. Yeah.
And then, so in terms of your ancestry, how far back can you go on your parents' side?
Well, the people that I have like the most details about, I mean, like, especially recently, my aunt's been doing like some genealogy stuff, and she's going like way back, doing a lot of research. But the people that like I know about, my mom's parents, one of them was from Brooklyn, like Williamsburg area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think upstate New York by way of like Canada. And then before that, like by way of like Scandinavia.
Mm.
And then my dad's parents, as far as I know, like they both grew up in Queens too, near JFK. So Queens and Brooklyn mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as is typical, I think, of a lot of people from Long Island. But
yes. I've been getting a lot of people with the connection to Brooklyn and Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned on your mom's side Scandinavia. What about on your dad's side, in terms of going further back?
Further back, well, my grandpa was Italian on my dad's side. My grandma, who is still with us, is Irish. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a lot of details about their parents, but they definitely both ended up in Queens in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, like they were like Italian on grandpa's side, and Irish, like nothing else as far as I know.
Mm.
Like their parents were probably like close to first generation. So,
okay.
Yeah. Again, like I wouldn't be like quoting me exactly on that, but that's the family legend anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and did you get to, you mentioned your grandmother is still alive, but did you get to meet some of your other grandparents?
Oh yeah, I knew all of my grandparents. my mom's parents were down here in Southold because her dad grew up in Southold as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in Southold his whole life. He's deceased now, but so those two were down here. My mom's parents, and then my dad's parents, since I've been around, have been upstate in the Lake George area.
Mm-hmm.
But he also grew up on Long Island. He grew up in Deer Park.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then like after a kind of winding life journey, ended up in Greenport building boats. That's how I met my mom. She was a waitress at the rum line. So.
Okay. Nice.
Yep.
Where was the rum line?
Rum line is where Andy's is now.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so what did your dad do for work?
My dad was a boat builder out here. He worked at Hanf's Boatyard. And before that, he's had a bunch of different jobs. At one point, he kind of invented like this big novelty wall clock sized like wristwatch. Like it looked like a wristwatch, but it goes on your wall like a clock. He had like factories that were making them down in Florida. Yeah, he did that for a while. At one point, he was in Arizona working in a shop that made like prototypes for IBM computers when like they were the size of like a whole room, like way back in the day. And before that, he worked at Citibank in the city, just on the machines, like none of the actual like banking stuff. Like he was in the room making sure all the plotter printers like operated correctly when they were printing receipts out, way before paperless, obviously.
But you said he's from Deer Park?
Yeah, he's from Deer Park.
But he got a job working for boat building out here. Is that what initially brought him out here?
That's what brought him out here, yeah. Like, he grew up in Deer Park, and the job at Citibank was first, then he ended up in Arizona, then he was back up here and was, like, made the prototype for that wristwatch thing in his mom's basement, and then, like, that turned into a huge thing for him. He was down in Florida with a couple factories, and then when all of that, there's something happened with that where it kind of fell apart. Ended up back in New York, was doing some boat building stuff on the side, and like was looking for want ads, and actually saw one in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and looked it up wrong in the phone book or something, and called Greenport, and they were like, "We didn't have a want ad, but we do need help if you want to come work here." So we ended up in Greenport on like a mistake, basically.
Yeah.
And met my mom.
Wow.
So.
And
kind of weird.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then did your mom? She was working at the rum line, but did she work? What did she do as her career?
So she also kind of was all over the place. I have two siblings that are technically half siblings, and she was a single mom for a long time. She was upstate in New Paltz. She was down in Maryland, and she was a teacher. For my whole life, she was a teacher at Southold Elementary. And so when she met my dad, she was kind of like starting her teaching career and waitressing to make extra money. So that's how she was there.
Okay.
And there was actually a bartender friend of both of them that like he knew both of them. They didn't know each other, and he kind of introduced them. So
nice.
Yeah.
And then for you went through Southold all the way, elementary, middle school, high school.
Yeah. I spent my whole childhood here. Kindergarten and I think it's called like the Head Start kindergarten spot. It's actually pretty close to where Sophie's is, the bar in Southold. And then Southold Elementary, and then Southold High School.
Okay. And how would you describe the area, the neighborhood growing up? Just as a child out here, and even what activities would you do outside of school or on the weekend?
Right. Well, I feel like it was a lot more night and day in terms of like the population that like had second homes would come here like only for the summer really, and like the rest of town at least in a kid's eyes, was like dead.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very slow when it wasn't like June, July, or August. And, there was like a big farm field that belonged to a farmer that like wasn't really using it between my house and my neighbor's house. And my neighbor was actually the same age as me. We went to school together. We would like do stuff in the field and go off in the woods and mess around. And, yeah, a lot of stuff like that. A lot of time outside, going to the beach. My grandparents had a pool down in the Bayview area. So we'd go to their house and hang out there. Yeah, like a lot of time with my cousins too that live locally. And then as a teenager at like middle school and then in my teenage years, it was more like kind of just, what teenagers do.
Mm-hmm.
Go hang out at the beach, drinking.
Yeah.
Or like, I wasn't like a super social kid, so I had like a couple good friends and we would usually just end up like wandering around town. Like, it's like, oh, what do you want to do tonight? Oh, let's go to 7-Eleven. Like, it's like the only thing that's open. We can go stand around the parking lot.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's still somewhat the same.
Yeah. I think that's it's funny. It's almost like seems like it's like ingrained in people from around here. It's like, let's go to 7-Eleven,
Yeah. But do you feel like other things have changed even within Southold, or do you feel it still looks the same overall?
Yeah, I'd say it still mostly looks the same. I don't know, I feel like things have definitely changed. I feel like a lot of the new businesses are just like much nicer looking and a little more upscale and stuff like that. Like I remember from being a kid, like one of my favorite things to do with my dad was drive around and kind of go to like antique stores. But back then I feel like older, like more like Americana type of antiques were more popular. And so like there were all these different spots we could go that were just kind of like piled high with junk. Like all types of old stuff. And also being like a book person now, like there's a lot of places I didn't appreciate as much as I was when I was a kid. Like the Book Scout in Greenport is gone. And that was like one of those places you walk in, like there's no lights on and there's just like books all over the floor. It's like a real, like places like that I feel like we're seeing less of now. There's a couple that are still around that are hanging on. And now as an adult I know some of the people that own them, that have owned them since I was a kid. But so seems a little bit more polished these days. Yeah.
And would you come over to Greenport through your middle school, high school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. It was funny because I feel like now Southold is kind of like a walkable little village. I feel like there's a lot more walking traffic there. That's something that's very different now from compared to when I was a kid. A lot of people kind of just like hanging out, going to the coffee shops, going to like, I don't know, like a place like, I always see tons of people sitting in like Einstein Square or something like that. Whereas like back in the day, it was even during the summer, it was not like a place where people were all milling around. Whereas Greenport, when I was a kid, it was like, oh yeah, I had friends from Greenport. Let's go to Greenport. We can go to the skate park. We can go to, so-and-so's house. And we're just like walking all over town, It was definitely like, yeah, it was kind of fun. It was like, oh yeah, let's go to Greenport, that's like the place to hang out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was more exploring.
Yeah. And like Mitchell Park was a new thing then.
Yes.
We'd go hang out at Mitchell Park after we go to the skate park, get kicked out of Mitchell Park for skateboarding on the boardwalk or, for people familiar with skateboarding, you gotta like to do like grind tricks, you gotta like wax the curb, and I had friends that would be like waxing the wooden benches, and that would really piss people off. There's like, I still see like, I feel like they're like relics of a bygone era, like all the no skateboarding signs I still see in Southold and Greenport, and because I don't see kids like skateboarding just like on the street anymore.
No,
that was like a thing that I feel like was also like in style at that point. So it's like tons of kids were doing it, and we were a menace. A little bit of a public nuisance, but Hey, kids will be kids.
Yeah.
So.
And what about your schooling experience? How was that? And it was all in that one building.
Oh,
Oh,
like
was this?
elementary
It
and high
was the
school.
elementary school building, right?
Yeah. The elementary school was newer. I think they got. Actually, they were like it was finished, but it wasn't really, and they were like kind of still working on it when I went to first grade there because I did kindergarten somewhere else in like that Head Start place. Yeah, I mean that far back. I mean, I don't know. It was trying to remember like how it really was.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like nothing really like super exceptional. I mean, my graduating class was like 75 people. So like you knew everybody, obviously, which I'm sure is very common with everyone around here. You know, like a large class in our high schools is like 100 people.
Yeah.
Which, you know.
I don't know if it's, people have said it's kind of on a decline in terms of like.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, I don't really know anymore, but I've heard that too. Like, because my mom was a teacher, she still is like somewhat, you know, has like friends that are still working and stuff like that, and has heard, like classes are smaller and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it was okay. You know, again, like I was not super social. I had like a couple friends, and
What about? Did you enjoy any particular subjects or core classes?
I wasn't like, to be honest, I wasn't like a huge fan of school. I didn't mind it, but I didn't really like it so much where like I really like wanted to go, you know, like
just kind of there, but
just
really...
kind of there. I mean, I got like involved with music because that was like my first major interest was music. I play the drums, and I've been in a bunch of different bands and stuff like that, and that got started when I was in elementary school. And I actually didn't get into, you know, like as far as subjects go, I struggled with a lot. I was bad at math, I was bad at science, especially in like middle school, high school. I only took foreign languages for like a few years that I had to, and then when they were allowing people to not take them, I didn't, because I'm one of those kids that, you know, I got Spanish ninth period and I'm drooling on my desk, and the teacher like whacks it with the yardstick, like, wake up, what the hell are you doing? But I didn't really get into English, which I did like a little bit, you know, and I was good at like mechanical English as a kid, like spelling. I got 100 on like every spelling test I pretty much ever did. But like I didn't really start getting into like literature and stuff like that until 11th grade. So
I feel like some people can be turned off by just the way the literature English classes can be taught, and then you don't really, well, you're assigned different books. In some ways, I think, I mean, just to piggyback off of what you said, I think I even got into it after 12th grade.
Yeah, right.
More so when I got, like, going into college, more interested in literature.
Yeah, I think 11th grade English, and then 12th grade I took like AP literature. We're both with the same teacher, Mr. Stahl. Definitely a good teacher to have for those years when I was starting to get into books, because it was funny, like I was getting into like some philosophers and like kind of classic authors, like, you know, Kafka and Dostoevsky and like the existentialists and like a little bit of the Beats and like stuff like that around that time, because of music, because of like punk bands that I listened to that are like, you know, have songs that are called I Am Nietzsche or something. And, you know, I'm like, what is all this about? You know, and I started looking things up. And then I got into literature by way of, like punk bands that, you know, music again, like as a teenager and still, I mean, I'm still involved somewhat in like punk music, the punk music scene and stuff like that. Still go to a lot of shows. I still play in bands, and like those two things have carried with me since, I think, that time. Punk and like all the DIY like ethos of that sort of thing, and books became like intertwined at that point.
Yeah.
And like in retrospect, I feel like I'm better at playing music than writing, but I did go to school for writing because of how jazzed up about it I was at that point. And that is why I'm still into books. So
Were you playing in a band through high school?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a band in high school with another guy that went to Southold who was a year older than me, and two guys from Riverhead that he met one of them at a dentist office that he had an appointment at or something because the guy had a mohawk, and he like saw him in the waiting room and was like, "Oh, you must listen to punk music too," you know. So otherwise we would have never met them. But yeah, I was in a band with those guys. We played nowhere around here, really. I think we played one or two shows. I booked a show with a friend in Cutchogue at one point that was like okay, and then he tried to book a couple more that totally flopped. Or one was pretty good in Riverhead, and he booked another one the next day. No one came, like no one, except for the bands who were touring.
Yeah. But it was tougher as you go further east out here.
Yeah,
Further.
definitely.
And then, so did you know coming out of high school exactly what you wanted to do for a living? Or you said that you wanted to go and to study literature, but...
Yeah. So my idea, because I was thinking like I had to get something that was really like a job. You know what I mean? Like I knew like going to college for like literary studies would probably, you know, really like broaden my scope of what I knew about literature and like whatever. And like I felt like I could get better at writing fiction and stuff like that. I mean, I've always written poetry. I still write a lot of poetry, but I figured, okay, I should go to school for literature, but like make journalism my focus. I started with that thought because yeah, like being like a senior in high school, you know, it's kind of like, I feel like, you know, you're supposed to figure out, there's a lot of pressure to like figure out what you're going to do. And obviously that goes for like every kid. But there was definitely like a, you know, I'm like, well, you know, I don't know if I really want to study music. I don't, there was like a part of like teenage me that didn't want to like taint how special that was, you know what I mean? Like I thought that it was like, this is like my art, you know, I don't want to like mess with it, but I could learn how to write. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I had an interest in it, and I figured that was more, it's to me, again, as a teenager, seemed like more official than going to school for like drums or something.
Yeah.
So journalism was the focus. Yeah. When I was at the end of high school, I was like, I'm going to do that. And then I ended up not doing it. So did journalism for like a year in college, and I was like, I hate this.
We're going to switch.
Yeah, I ended up switching. My focus was fiction, which, again, you know, not super practical, but...
But did you also, coming out of high school, were you wanting to leave the North Fork and explore, see something else different from...
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing, and I feel like, I don't know if everyone has felt it around here, like being a kid or being a teenager. I feel like there was some sort of weird stigma amongst some people that like, oh yeah, you gotta like find a good college to go to. You don't want to go to like Suffolk, you know. It's like Suffolk is a perfectly good school that's affordable, it has good programs and everything, but yeah, you got to get out of here, man. Like you got to go somewhere, you know. And not even right, it's not even like there was an idea that it was like a bad school. It was like, oh, but that would mean you just go to Riverhead. So for me personally, personal impetus to like get the hell out of here, like not a lot, but like I almost felt like some sort of like peer like social pressure to be like, oh no, I gotta go somewhere, you know. And I definitely wanted to find a place ideal for me for what I want to do too. Like I went to the new school in Manhattan. I went to Eugene College, which is like a sub school of the university, and their like specialization was writing and literature. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll apply here. It seems like the one, you know. And then I also heard you don't have to take, you know, like required math or required science or anything.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, no requirements? Great. Yeah. Let me just do writing all the way, you know.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at science anyway, you know.
Now, did you got a fellowship at Eugene College?
Oh, yeah. I did do I forget what their official title was. It's so long ago. I know it's on like my resume. But yeah, I did like a student fellowship thing. I had a really good poetry professor, Jennifer Firestone, who like I knew that I liked writing poetry, and I knew that that was something I felt pretty confident I was like decent at, and I wanted to take more classes on it. I wanted to like explore that more. And I took a class with her, I think my sophomore year, and really enjoyed it. And I guess she thought I was doing good work because she invited me to be a fellow in a class the next year. I think it was the next year. It was Feminist Avant-Garde Poetics. And I was like one of 2 student fellows in that class as kind of like someone who's helping other people that are taking the class and like helping the teacher. And yeah, that definitely, that was great. I mean, I learned a lot. Learned a ton about poetry and different schools of poetry and different movements, like the history of kind of all of these like less than mainstream, like avant-garde or countercultural aspects of poetry. And yeah, it was great because, you know, again, like when you're in like high school literature, it's like, oh, you know, we might read like one poem by like somebody like Allen Ginsberg or something, just one, because it's like you got to know what it's like, you know, because otherwise we're reading like Paradise Lost, you know, or like trying to read Chaucer or like something, you know what I mean? And in hindsight, it's you know, it's funny to think of like, because for as popular as they are, the whole Beat generation and all the major like guys, you know, like Kerouac and Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti, R.I.P. Funny to think of them as like the avant-garde whatever that I was into when I was younger, because like when you get to college I'm like, oh, you know, holy whatever, you know what I mean. This is crazy. Like I didn't know about any of these like, you know, like language poetry or like concrete poetry or like all the political movements again that are attached to certain schools of poetry and poetics and all that sort of stuff. So the fellowship, doing that class, like being right alongside Firestone as like a professor and kind of a mentor, definitely was like a big influence at that point. I feel like I've shed a lot of like the pretensions I put on myself at that point to be like, oh, I should write like this, or I should do weird experiments and stuff like that with like erasure and cutting up other texts and like you know, all that weird stuff. I kind of write more straightforward stuff now, but I'm like happy to have known, happy to still know. And obviously it's been very enriching for me as a bookseller to know all that stuff. So
yeah. And how was the experience in New York City? Was that in the early 2010s?
Yeah, I started school in 2011.
Okay.
And I graduated 2015. Yeah, it was good. I think it was a good place to go to school. And it's kind of, I feel like, stereotypical at this point to like be out here and be in the city. Like as an adult, a lot of people go back and forth.
Yeah.
People that are from here and people that have come here from West and still go back and forth and all that sort of thing over, you know, however many, I don't know, like 50 years probably. There's like, I feel like a historical precedent for like artists being here part-time or writers and then also being able to go to the city. But yeah, it was like night and day, especially for me. You know, I visited like a couple times as a kid, and then like going to school there was kind of like, yeah, baptism by fire in a lot of ways. You know, because like again, like being used to being in Southold when I was a kid, when it was a lot more quiet, and then like living in Manhattan and living in Brooklyn, and a couple of jobs that I got while I was there. Like going to school was the one thing, and like being able to do all these great things locally, go to readings, go to shows, all that type of stuff right at your fingertips kind of was really awesome. But I also took a job while I was in school as a messenger and got like another view of New York, I feel like, as well. Because I was in a very academic place, and then I was also in a very like working class place, I feel like, dealing with running around like all 5 boroughs, like delivering stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think it was a positive experience for the most part. But by the end of the time I was living there full time, I was there for like nine years.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little bit burnt out post college, and like, you know, thought I might work in publishing, and I didn't really. I had like a couple part time jobs, and then I did like, you know, whatever. And my only full time job out of college in the city was at the Mysterious Bookshop.
Mm.
So, yeah.
But what did you initially do after graduating?
After graduating, like you saw, I had like a couple internships during school, Archipelago Books,
Mm-hmm.
Book Forum magazine, and Augury Books.
Mm-hmm.
I had all that stuff going on during school, and after graduation, I got some part-time work at Book Forum, Art Forum. It's the same company.
Mm-hmm.
Book Forum's kind of like the little sister magazine of Art Forum that's just focused on books rather than art.
Mm-hmm.
So from the internship I'd done, I learned that like there was part-time work in circulation there, and they would bring us in for like a week and a half, a month, just to package up and mail out, usually by messenger service. A lot of times not by the USPS, but like people would come, bike messengers would come pick up like these big bricks of magazines to bring to galleries
Mm-hmm.
in the city. And like they hired like, you know, like 4 of us a month to like pack up all the magazines that were supposed to be sent personally from the publisher, the editor, and
Mm-hmm.
they had their little notes in there like, thank you so much for your ad, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a part-time job, and I was just doing that for a while, where I would work for like half the month, be making like,
Mm-hmm.
at the time my partner, my girlfriend, and I were splitting an apartment uptown. She had a full-time job. I had like this half a month job, and I would like do that, and then the rest of the month I'd be like taking care of the dog and things around the house and all that sort of stuff. So I was really scraping along. But eventually I also got a part-time job at Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries as like a, again, it's funny to think because I had all these like quote like art world or publishing world jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and like every one that I had was like the bottom. You know what I mean? Like I'm the one like stuffing magazines in bags to mail. Then at Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries, I didn't learn anything about stamps. I was the guy that like put out the catering and answered the phone.
Mm.
And like, oh, do you need something? You know, I'll go get it for you, basically.
But was it supposed to be a like an internship job where you're supposed to learn?
No, none of them were.
Oh, okay.
After college, none of them were really like learning experience jobs.
But there wasn't any. Was there? There weren't any opportunities to.
See, the thing is, with Art Forum at least, I thought there was. And there was like a little bit of a carrot dangled in front of my face at one point. Like, oh, we have this, we're doing digital archiving of the old issues, because Art Forum has been a magazine since like the 60s.
Yeah.
And they have a big archive. Actually, it's physically not very big. It's the size of a closet, but they have an archive of old magazines in the office, and they were digitizing them so that people could access them online. I don't remember if it was only for subscribers or whatever, but they're like, oh, we have this job this summer. You're going to be helping digitize the old magazines if you want to. I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, it's going to pay the same or whatever. I was one of like 2 or 3 people that they were having do that. And like, I thought, you know, oh, I've been here for like doing stuff for like a couple of years. Like, maybe this is like something I could keep on doing. And there was even like an inkling of, you know, this could become full time, you know, type of thing. And then like, yeah, nothing happened. The person who was trying to set me up like with a job was like visibly annoyed that I didn't get it, but it like supposedly wasn't her decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I saw getting the job were people that were like, I look over and they were asleep at work. I'm like, something ain't right here. But yeah, so no, I mean, it wasn't really like a career path thing. It was like, how can I get the money and like be near stuff that I feel like I should be near to eventually have a career. You know what I mean? Stay in the art world, but like these jobs are not. There ain't anything after this.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so.
But were you switching more from the... Well, you said that the journalism definitely wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I quit that after like my first year of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But in terms of the publishing world, were you more interested in that later on compared to the art world?
Was definitely more interested in that. I kind of figured that going to school for literary studies, my focus was writing, but I did figure that job-wise, I should be looking to the publishing world, the publishing industry, because I was doing like some editorial work as an intern and Augury Books, a small press. They're like a small poetry press, still based in New York. They were having me do editorial stuff after college too, and I never got paid like a little bit from them, but they're such like, they were such a small like shoestring operation. Like their authors didn't even get like paid a ton. They just weren't able to do it. It was more about getting your stuff published. So I did want to like find a real like publishing job. I knew I had experience doing some of that stuff. But then like I talked to a professor at the end of my college career he was my advisor at that time, and I had taken several classes with him, and he was a great guy, author himself, and he actually worked at Bookform, which was, I applied for an internship there without him knowing, but something tells me, he saw my name somewhere. Oh yeah, this guy should intern here. I sat down and talked to him about working in publishing, and he was like, yeah, that's not a bad idea, but it's just not the same as it used to be. When I was your age, you could be just like a copy editor for like a little while, and then like, he's like, I did that, and my apartment was only $200 a month, and I kind of just like traveled around the country and filed for unemployment everywhere. I'm like, just to like do the like whole like kind of bohemian writer type of thing, and just kind of like live on the seat of your pants or whatever. He's like, yeah, you can't really afford to do that anymore. If you want to work in publishing, you gotta like focus, and you gotta start by doing like grunt work, basically. That's what I figured out. I had that conversation with him, and then I'm like, really looked into it, into the job market at the time. This is like 2015. I haven't checked on it in a long time, so I can't say how accurate it is now, but like, a starting position in a publishing company, which is usually like editorial assistant, paid like less than $30K salary wise. It was like 28 or 29K a year. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that and this is a job where like you're going to end up, it's very high stress. You handle a lot of kind of like the background stuff of the publishing world, which is like, again, liaising between like authors and editors and like design people, and like probably going to end up doing a lot of the menial stuff too, like going to get people coffee and lunch and stuff like that. On top of that, you may have to take work home with you, like, and I'm like, for that high a level of stress for that much money, and I'm gonna have to do that for like a few years before I get like a significant promotion or pay raise, like when my rent is gonna be like splitting an apartment with somebody is gonna be like $1,000 a month. I was like, there's got to be something else. You know what I mean? So I kind of gave up on it because I realized my interests were more in writing anyway at that point, rather than the technical side of it. And again, like the practical side of it, would have been more practical to like get that sort of job, but I'm still like more attracted to, and will always be more attracted to, the creative side of it.
And
not
just
the
that
soul-crushing
whole
side of it.
yeah. But that whole experience through just some of the publishing world wasn't the greatest experience. And from there, did you move to the Mysterious Bookshop?
Yeah, so Mysterious Bookshop came after Cadogan Tate, which was an art handling job. Whew. Actually, you know what? I said earlier my first full-time job was Mysterious Bookshop. Cadogan Tate was my first full-time job. but it had nothing to do with publishing or anything like that. It was all computer, like inventory and manual labor.
Mm-hmm.
Very low pay, aggressive management who was actively always trying to ignore or like overload the workers and stuff like that. So after I got that full-time job, I thought that was my ticket out of like all these weird part-time jobs I have to work, and I was like, wow, this is horrible. This is really...
What is that, a publishing company?
Cadogan Tate is an art handling company. It's kind of like what I like to term, after having been there and seen it, like really just like a luxury moving company.
Mm-hmm.
With a large warehouses all over the country and internationally. They handle high-end furniture. They do handle art, but seldom did I see it in my department. I was always handling like shipments of furniture coming in, because designers would send their stuff to the warehouse. My job was to open it, make sure it ain't broken or damaged in any other way.
Yeah.
Inventory it in their inventory and all of that. Made a lot of friends there. Met a person that I was in a relationship with for several years there. I still have friends from that job, but I almost feel like we became friends because of our shared suffering a lot of the time.
Yes. Hatred for the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very bleak and kind of gray job, if I could describe it in many ways.
Yeah.
Just, manual labor, in the middle of nowhere in Brooklyn, kind of. I shouldn't say really the middle of nowhere, but as far out as you can get in Greenport from like anything. There's like one or two places to go to lunch. There's one place looked like they hadn't cleaned it since like the 90s, maybe. It was very cheap though, but just like I was like, all right, well, this is what it's like to work for, do manual labor basically but to get back to that, to the bookshop, so after this Cadogan Tate experience, which was not fun, except for the people I met. Yeah, I did end up working at the bookshop, and again, I just handled all of the shipping at the bookshop. I was like the shipping clerk, packed up all the orders going out from their online store, received different things, and did a little bit of kind of like website maintenance here and there, but again, kind of more of like a manual labor job. But I learned a lot more from this job about what I do now than any of my other jobs. Working at the mysterious bookshop, basically, and meeting a couple people that also worked there inspired me to become a bookseller. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Besides just your main job was more the shipping part, but did you get to just the behind the scenes and with new books coming in, or that was also, I mean, obviously with that influence, that influenced you as well. Yeah,
definitely. As far as behind the scenes goes, yeah, you know what? Yeah, my job was, like I said, shipping, but there was some points at that job where I would be totally slammed for like days and packing like 100 packages a day. And would barely even have time to like go get lunch, like shove it down my face, basically get back to work, But there was also other times where there was like just nothing going on. And there wasn't a whole lot of pressure, like basically like make sure your space is tidy. If you see anything around the shop that needs doing, or if the manager asks me to do something that's non-shipping related, I do it. But there was not a lot of pressure to like keep busy if there's nothing to do. If there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. And this is a bookstore that's main dealings are, well, first of all, they only sell mystery and crime fiction. That the shop owner has had it since the 70s. He's also a publisher, and like that's all he's interested in. That's all he wants to see. Even if the same author wrote, like as is common with a lot of older genre fiction authors, like even if that person wrote science fiction, he doesn't care. He doesn't like, comes across a rare science fiction book by someone who's predominantly a crime fiction author. He's like, whatever, dude. Like, I don't care. Basically, he was crime fiction like all the way. So their main business was selling to collectors of crime and mystery fiction, whether that be antiquarian books, like very old, like, late 1800s stuff, like an original, like Arthur Conan Doyle, like Sherlock Holmes books, stuff like that, or like, we had a subscription where like people could get signed copies of contemporary authors' books as soon as they came out, basically from our shop. That was their main business, was selling signed books, and not for any markup at the cover price. So yeah, so I did learn a lot about book collecting. I had a lot of time, a lot of downtime to like go browse the shelves, because the shop is one room, but it's got these like massive, like high ceilings, and the whole walls, like all the way around, are built-in bookcases. And like most of them, there's a whole wall of new paperbacks, and they've got like tables of the new signed, new arrivals that just came in, but like most of it was old books, like rare mysteries. So I got not only like an education by like just getting up on the ladder on the wall and like looking at stuff in my downtime. I didn't only get an education about like first editions and like how to grade a book and stuff like that, but I learned tons about a genre that, again, like going to like liberal arts school for literature, it's like genre fiction is kind of like secondary. I didn't know anything about crime fiction, or like, like the noir classics, like stuff that movies are based off of, and stuff like that. So like I got this whole education about a genre too, which is still kind of, near and dear to me. There's a lot of stuff that, a lot of authors that I never would have known about, from bygone eras that like are some of my favorite authors now, as well. So, yeah.
And we're going to get to how you started Forked Road Press, but at that time, were you also collecting? Do you have your own collection, or as a bookseller, do you more try to keep moving your books?
That's like a constant struggle, I would say. Yeah, because up until I started working at the bookshop, obviously I had tons of my own books, being like a writing person, but I had really no concept of book collecting. Like I didn't understand, like, or I didn't even know about people seeking out first editions and like in a very specific condition, and like all that sort of stuff. I was kind of like, okay, like if you buy a book new, it costs like $15 or $25, and when you're done with it, you donate it, or like, or you bring it to the Strand bookstore in Manhattan, you get like $2 for it, and whatever. At least you didn't have to like throw it out. You know what I mean? So like, when I started working at the bookshop and realized like there's this whole world of rare books that I had no real concept of, like ironically enough, as someone who really cares about writing and all of that stuff, like had no concept of the real value. I guess I was kind of like devaluing my own interests and craft at that point. And I was like, no, like I realized people collect books and like look for specific editions, and there's like this whole world of this stuff. So I did start collecting when I started working there. For a while, because the crime fiction thing was so new to me, I would spend time like browsing the shelves again, not only learning, but I pick something up, I'm like, oh, this looks really good, and I get an employee discount. Okay, yeah, I'll grab it, And I did build up a bit of a collection of stuff like that. I started paying more attention to things that I would have just like gotten rid of in the past, from authors that I liked and stuff like that. I was trying to like curate my own library, you know what I mean? And there was tons of stuff I held on to. There's still lots of stuff I hold on to. But if I'm going out to sell for my business, I pay a different way than if I'm buying for myself. I always try to be honest, and like stuff that I keep is if I'm buying from someone's personal collection, rather than like rummaging through the trash or something, or like rummaging through like a yard sale box, like I'm always going to pay that person who is entrusting me with their stuff well, if I'm going to keep it, you know what I mean? And I'm going to pay, I also pay well, obviously, if I'm going to sell it, but it's a whole different thing. You got margins, business margins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, you pay one price as you can sell it for another price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, when did you decide to, when you did come back out to the North Fork, is that when you started Forked Road Press?
So it was kind of a thing a few years before I left the city. When I was at the bookshop, I met a guy who had started a bookstore in Brooklyn with a couple of his friends still around. It's called Better Read Than Dead. And rather than R-E-D is R-E-A-D. And they've got a few different shops now. He's no longer part of it. He's doing his own thing upstate somewhere as far as I know. I haven't kept in touch with him. But I met him and he was like, you know, telling me all about selling books on the street in Brooklyn. And I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Like I see people doing that. Again, something I had no concept of, you know. I'm just going to the Strand and like giving them my books for $1 a piece. When I could apparently go throw a folding table on the sidewalk in like Bushwick or something in Brooklyn and sell my paperbacks for like $5 or $6 a piece. And I was like, wow, I had no idea. And he's like, yeah, and you can do it without a vendor's license because of some sort of like First Amendment thing where it's like people are free to distribute literature or artwork. It's like kind of like, yeah, it's like some sort of loophole where you don't need to, you can just go do it. Like anyone can go do it. So I was like, all right, that's really cool. So I tried it a few times. At first, you know, books on like a blanket on the ground. And eventually I graduated to the folding table, you know. And I was like trying to come up with a name because I knew at some point I would want to try to publish things too. I've been inspired by, again, like all this whole history, countercultural history of small presses and publishing poetry and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I want to have like a real like name. I'm not just going to be selling books and that's it. Like at some point I'll be printing stuff. I still haven't really to this day gotten to that point. I've printed a few of my own things and have plans to do other people's stuff, nothing concrete, but eventually when I find myself in a better place with the equipment and like the means to produce things that I'll be proud of aesthetically as well, I'll be doing that more actively. So I named it Forked Road Press back then and like didn't really have, you know, didn't make that public until I made like an Instagram account and like would post, oh, I'm going to go sell books on the street today. I was trying to get people to follow me that way. That's before I started doing what I do now, which is post books for sale on there. But that's how it started. That was like 2017, I think, when I first started doing it.
And from there, why did you decide to come back out to the North Fork?
Well, part of it was I was considering a move just out of the city at some point because by that point, you know, I had found this job at the Mysterious Bookshop. I really enjoyed it. The owner of the store was very generous, gave generous, as compared to everybody else in my experience up to that point, gave a generous raise, gave bonuses, like all that stuff. But again, you know, I'm moving from one shoddy apartment to another because of rent increases, or in one case, I had to leave an apartment because the building was being foreclosed on. Like the people are just stealing our rent, not paying their $1 million mortgage back that was backed up, and the place was falling apart. Moved to a neighborhood that was super far removed from everything and was more expensive than the last one. I'm like, I got to get out of this cycle, you know what I mean? Because I'm still making like between 35 and 40K at the best. And like I have a roommate and this tiny little apartment in a place where like I can't go do anything. Like my commute to work from Brooklyn to Tribeca, which is where the bookshop was 45 minutes on the train. And like COVID happened, and when they opened everything back up after the lockdown, no, you know, I was like, I don't want to take the subway. And my girlfriend at the time was also like, you should not take the subway. And I'm riding my bike to work both ways, which is 6 miles each way.
Wow.
Going over the bridge every day, like I got in shape, which was nice. I got to get back on the bike now, to be honest with you, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just like it had really reached like I had a little bit of an idea that I wanted to leave already, and it had kind of reached a breaking point where I was like, all right, I'm, she was my girlfriend at the time was planning on leaving the city. I'm planning on leaving the city. We're gonna go our separate ways out of the city. She was from New Jersey, and we're gonna meet. I was probably gonna meet her back down there, but I just knew I was gonna get out of the city and try to do this book thing full time.
Mm-hmm.
And moving back here, my parents are here. I have an opportunity to stay with them for a while and kind of figure that out financially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but now I'm not moving to New Jersey. Now I'm just here.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to stick around. So
Yeah.
So
And that was, you came back here after COVID?
Yeah.
20...
End of 2020, actually.
Okay.
Like right after, pretty much. I worked at the bookshop up until September of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, in terms of coming back out here, were you, in terms of scouting for books, you would do that in Brooklyn and in the city? But now that you're out here, you're focused on the North Fork region mostly, or do you explore other parts of Long Island in terms of looking for books?
Yeah, no, I mean, I still go back to the city once in a while. There's like a couple places that I know I like to hit. They're always, if nothing else, if it's not super productive, they're fun to go to. They're fun to dig at. But yeah, I mean, now that I'm out here, house calls, and these days that's usually by word of mouth. I used to advertise in the Suffolk Times more, that I was like looking for stuff. But now it's more word of mouth, which is really great. I've met a lot of really great people that have welcomed me into their homes to check out what they got, and made some friends that way, made connections that way. But I also, it's kind of like a constant thing, especially if you know the type of stuff that you want to sell. Because for me, like, I don't really like to be just like an opportunistic like reseller. You know what I mean? Like, I really want to have like a forked road press, like this is what I sell type of situation, which is literature, art, definitely a focus on poetry and countercultural stuff, and what I would eventually like to specialize in. And it's tough to find exactly what you want in this case, but like folk history, folklore, mythology, kind of like non-academic like people's history, basically. Kind of like what you're doing with this podcast, which I think is really cool. Like getting people's stories from the ground, basically. Because there's so many like books that I've found that are published by like regional presses somewhere about very specific things to like that region, that town, that state, whatever. Yeah, like that stuff is just like so fascinating to me, so interesting to like kind of it's interesting to say, because you're like broadening your whole like understanding of people and of places and stuff by focusing in on something like so small, like crabbing in Booth Bay Harbor, Maine, or you know what I mean, like shit like that, where like that is just like so inspiring to me, that like people dedicate that much time and like passion and all that sort of thing into like stuff like that, to like write a book about it and like document their little corner of the world, you know what I mean? So to get back on topic, like again, like I don't like to be just like a reseller. I'm always looking for specific stuff. Yeah, so I'm like all over the place, like 24/7. I'm going to, if I'm not going to like estate sales or something like that, I'm going to a house call. If I'm not going to a house call, I'm planning a trip up to like New England, just drive around for a couple days. I'm going to like, there's been a couple times where I'm like, oh, if I could make it to this library sale, if I drive 2 hours to my friend's house and sleep over and get up at 6 a.m. and then drive another hour and a half north, like into like like the Westchester area or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I've been down to Pennsylvania, like, and that's the thrill of a lot of it too, is finding stuff, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like you gotta like doing it, and I definitely like doing it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you have it on Instagram.
yep,
Um, what about other platforms, or say like eBay, or
yeah.
where you could have a page on there?
I do have an eBay account.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've got a lot of listings on there. My primary is Instagram. That's where a lot of things go first.
Mm-hmm.
If I come across things that I don't think are really catered to like the people I know and sell to on Instagram that are still of interest and are still of value to me, like, or of value in general, those will go straight to eBay. Always keeping an eye out for other ways to sell because all of these platforms are not great. With
Mm-hmm.
eBay, like with Instagram, it's the algorithm
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like you can be rolling right along, then all of a sudden everything drops off. You have no traffic just because you've been like rotated out of like the explore page or something where people can just like find your stuff because it's right there. With eBay, it's the exorbitant fees that they charge
Mm-hmm.
on sales. I mean, between having to have an account there so that you can have a certain amount of listings, you got to pay per month. Then you
Mm-hmm.
pay fees per sale. And it ends up being like,
Not worth it.
oh man, it's brutal. It's like a third or more of the money
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time. And I do also sell records and other odds and ends music wise on a website called Discogs, which only deals in music. But again, Discogs has been bought by another company who has very little interest, I think, in the community aspect of that,
Mm-hmm.
of what it was, which is almost like a buy, sell, and trade type of place that also acts as like a music Wikipedia for a lot of people. Like you find
Mm-hmm.
something really obscure, you can usually find an entry for it on there that someone has submitted. Another company bought Discogs, and now it's like full of ads and like very clunky to use, and again, the fees keep getting raised. Like it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I see some people with success as booksellers that have like their own websites and stuff like that, hoping to pivot towards something like that if I can. Although it's very difficult to do without a very big following already.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in terms of now that you've had it for,
It's been an official business for like on the books for like 3 or 4 years, but I have been. I
mm-hmm.
was selling books on the street since like 2017,
Mm-hmm.
so that's 7, 8 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But has business been okay, and even say getting more sales even in the last year or two?
Um, the last, the first half of this year was actually pretty slow. It has increased dramatically since I really started doing it full time in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten a lot of followers on Instagram, as compared to what I started out with. And the nice thing about being out here and being a part of the community and all that is being able to sell in person too. And like, that's been picking up for me, doing
Mm-hmm.
pop-ups and things like that in lieu of hopefully someday having a store or something.
That
Um,
would be something down the line that you would
yeah, I
like
have
to
a good
have.
friend. Her name's Bianca, and she does a vintage clothing business called All Hours.
Mm.
And me and her will do pop-ups together a lot. And it was actually her idea originally that we may have a store someday together and kind of split it up.
Nice.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so in the last couple of years, I'd say online has been on and off. Again, just because of the nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one year, I don't think it was last year, maybe 2022, where Instagram for me was just like on fire. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like I sell like almost everything I posted, be shipping out like tons of stuff every day. But that's the nature of Instagram is like I think that I was somewhere visible, not to people who knew me, but just like almost like advertised somewhere like on their kind of browse page, like when you go on Instagram. Oh, I'll just look at this page full of random people. Oh, this looks interesting. You can click it. I got a bunch of followers, and then like the next it's like one day it can be like that. The next day it can be like, why am I only getting 5 likes on my post? I had 100 yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And like this year, it's kind of been like that for the first
Mm-hmm.
half of the year. It's been very slow. I've been trying to figure out other approaches to making it work, how to like trigger more activity on there by doing certain things, as Instagram as an app, as a social media app, has also evolved to like force people to do like certain things to get noticed. Like they have Reels now, which is almost like TikTok, where it's
Yeah.
like you have to make videos and
They're
things like
trying
that.
to compete
Yeah.
with
Right.
TikTok, and then even YouTube has changed, and they want for YouTube creators, I think they want your videos to be even shorter now, and
Yeah.
they'll promote that more than say they consider longer videos are like over 10 minutes now, or 30. I mean 30 minutes, but it's kind of unfortunate that.
Yeah. It's really odd. I mean, yeah, it's funny because I feel like all these sorts of like interactive and like socially geared platforms eventually end up eating themselves because like they compete with each other to be like each other because they think like, oh, TikTok's getting more traffic than us because they have these, little clips and like they're usually digestible. Oh yeah, it's like, so then all of a sudden you have like a bunch of sponsored like, check out these reels you might like, and it's like 6 little videos on Instagram. It's bizarre. I mean, it's like the same thing that it's gonna make me sound like a dinosaur, but we both know, it's like the demise of like MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
Like MySpace was a thing, and then they basically messed it all up by like trying to make it something it was not to compete with Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Facebook blew up, and now
Facebook's
Facebook.
kind of on a downward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even go on it anymore.
Yeah,
Like it's like,
people have moved on to other.
yeah,
It's always like they always keep moving on to the next thing.
right. Yeah, I mean, and even Instagram, like beyond my problems with like algorithm and business not being so good, like it's social media. You go on there to like follow people that you don't know but you want to follow, and follow your friends and follow your family, and then it's like you go on Instagram and like every other post is sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not people you follow. It's got nothing. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with what you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, like where are my friends? Like where are all these places? Like I want to see what they're up to. I can't. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the whole feed is just like clogged with junk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. Always looking for something better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just looking at you mentioned wanting to publish more,
Mm-hmm.
but just in the future with even how things are changing within the publishing world
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more digital media. I mean, we're seeing that with newspapers now, and then even publishers still trying to figure out what they're doing with the ebooks and audiobooks and licensing things
Mm-hmm.
with Amazon, and with them still trying to make a profit. How do you see the future of the publishing world evolving or not evolving?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I guess like being at the bookshop was kind of like my last real
Mm-hmm.
involvement with like knowing what's going on with publishing, and being there, especially knowing what's going on with like commercial publishing, because the mystery thriller genre, and I feel like a lot of other genre fiction, is kind of like commercially what sells really well for these big publishers, fiction wise. Like they may sell other nonfiction and books ghostwritten for celebrities and things like that, but like it's interesting, like I found out like a lot of numbers and stuff of some of the best selling authors of those books, and they were in the thousands and stuff like that. But then it's like other authors, they'd only sell like a few hundred or like 1,000, and then like all their stuff gets like remaindered and sent back to the publisher and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I mean, as far as publishing goes, I feel like, to me, in my opinion, like that's all one thing. Like that's like the real like money making aspect of book publishing. Yeah, it's probably going towards digital.
Mm-hmm.
I think because like these publishing companies are eating it a lot of the times, like printing up a bunch of books and then having them not sell. Where it's like you can just do an ebook. You don't have to print anything. Why print all these books when you can spend more money on like developers like laying out something well or like
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of thing, because if you don't sell ebooks you don't have to like pulp them and take it as a loss really. That would make more sense to me for commercial publishers to be going like mostly to digital. But like what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, I was going to say that I think they're also, it's also not cheap for the digital books either anymore.
No.
I think it's almost coming out to the same price or even a little bit more, because I think they're wanting to make that extra, and then they might have to pay for other platforms with selling it, like Audible with Amazon, or
Oh, that makes sense.
even for libraries.
Yeah, you would know more about that, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's still cheaper to buy the book,
Yeah.
a physical copy now.
Okay.
But for the convenience of, say, let's order 5 digital copies of this for, say, the system, Suffolk County, it's still going to cost some money, and you will have a waiting list. But you could,
Right.
other libraries can still buy a single copy. I'm still more of a I like the physical
Oh yeah.
book. I know I get
Yeah.
why people read online and on Kindle, but I still am more of a physical person.
Yeah. I mean, me too, definitely. Yeah. It's half the reason I sell books. I mean, just like the design, the quality of like older stuff, if you find it in decent shape, it's like far superior to even more recent print books, like stuff we would get in new at the bookshop. Like the pages would be brown in like 6 months. 'Cause they're printing like a $30 book, a hardcover book on like pulp paper, and like the boards of the book are covered in paper too. Like, yeah, it's just the older stuff is just like from back in the day when obviously publishing was making people more money. They were, and materials were cheaper, like quality materials. It was easier to make like nicer stuff, and it's nice to find that stuff tactilely. It's like much nicer, definitely. But it does make sense for people that are like reading like say every James Patterson book or something like that to like do it digitally, because dude, there's like how many now? Who knows?
I don't know.
Doesn't
I can't
even
keep
write them
track
anymore. So
yeah, I can't keep track. But
yeah.
now, in terms of just you personally, you've done some poetry. Have you worked on other types of writing, say even fiction or short stories?
Yeah, I've done some fiction. I've had like a handful of publications in small places. Probably like a third fiction, I would say, 2/3 poetry. Yeah, and I still write fiction, mostly short fiction. I haven't gotten, to like writing a novel yet. I tried to start doing that during COVID, of course, just like when else. I've got nothing to do and I live in a box. I'm just gonna get up and write every day. I was in the city, so I couldn't go outside really. So I started doing that and then like stopped and then went back to it a year later. I was like, this is horrible. I feel like as a lot of writers and artists do. In retrospect, they look back, they're like, I'm gonna write something new. This is bad. Why did I think this was good?
But you have any future ideas or other things? I know you mentioned with your business, possibly website or even having a brick and mortar store, but just you're still working on your own creativity.
Oh, writing-wise? Yeah, definitely. No, the business is important, but I'm definitely in my downtime, when I have the energy for it, I'm definitely still writing. Again, write tons of poetry. I I don't know how many that I haven't even sent out. Fiction, writing fiction, I still like to do, I try to do, but it's definitely much slower going, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got like a few stories, a couple of which have been printed in journals, and a few that I haven't sent anywhere, but I would like to at some point put them together and like have a book of short stories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And poetry, I've like self-published a lot of things. I've self-published like a few chapbooks. You know, again, not with very wide distribution. It's like me, you know, I don't like have a distributor or anything like that. But an all in-house type of production, and I'm definitely proud of them. But like with Forked Road Press, eventually I do want to do probably like a smaller like chapbook focused schedule of books, like have people submit stuff and publish like shorter books that I'm able to produce myself. But you know, I also want them to look nice. You know, if I'm publishing other people's stuff, it's funny. Like with my stuff, I'm like, yeah, this is good enough. You know, it's like but I'm gonna have people send me their work. I feel like I owe them the respect to like make it look beautiful, like production wise.
I think it's important, especially in today's environment, and just having the independent publisher, having someone like you or other people that have started up a press where you would give people the opportunity, because I think with a lot of the big major publishers it can be a challenge, and just all the agent stuff and having to have money, and then I think it's also who you know and what might be in vogue at that time, and they'll
Definitely
publish so many things on that particular thing. So I think for everyone else that doesn't have that, well, I think it's very hard to get into that. So I think it's important to have that.
Definitely. I mean, that's part of the reason, even, you know, like obviously the financial situation of me working in publishing was not going to work out. I had like, you know, I knew that I didn't want to do it because of that, but also because of, you know, realizing that commercial publishing and even academic publishing and stuff like that is like there's tons of things that get passed over that are great. And I even experienced it working for a small press. Like, you know, there's things that personally we find very interesting, but is it going to move? Like, is it going to sell? You know, I think that, yeah, for me, like doing some small press stuff, you know, even if it's not like a super big print run, even if it's small editions and stuff like that, like, and even if it's ephemeral work, like a 50-page little thing or something like that, like a chapbook, like there's definitely a lot of value in like being on the same level with the person that you're working on the book with, and like giving people the opportunity to send in something that's could be challenging or like could be experimental or could be like an ephemeral thing, you know, and just like building community that way. I feel like for me, like when you have the question, like, what do you think the future of publishing is? It's like, there's one future for like commercial publishers and bigger publishers like Random House and Macmillan and like these Simon and Schuster. And then there's the other future of publishing, which is very grassroots. You know what I mean? Like it is kind of like going back and forth, like from small press to small press, like trading stock with each other so you can each distribute each other's stuff, or like, you know, taking submissions from having an open submission period, like really looking at everything you get and just like making it more of a community thing, because I feel like, again, it gets back to my interest in like people's history and people's organization. Like all of us on the ground should be, you know, holding each other up basically, because in the end that's what's really important. That's really all we got, you know.
And just, you mentioned with what you were interested early on with literature and some of the, I don't know if I want to say classics, but some of the older work that you were, like Kafka and some of the Beat generation. What do you think in terms of your own work? Which authors or artists have influenced you the most throughout your career?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, back then when I was getting started, it's definitely Kafka, Dostoevsky, like Albert Camus, like all the existentialists. And those are Kafka and Dostoevsky are two authors who, whenever I see an edition of a book by them that I don't have, I keep it.
Yeah.
Even if I have like 5 copies of the Brothers Karamazov or something like that.
Just have another edition of it.
Yeah, I have like shelves full of just like this is all Kafka, and there may be like like 6 copies of The Trial or something. Like, if I don't have it, I keep it. That's like one of the things I collect like a maniac.
Nice.
If I already have it, I sell it. That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so back then, definitely those people. When I was end of high school, beginning of college, definitely the Beats. Like I have a Kerouac. I still like if I don't have a book by him and I see it, I will buy it. He's definitely writing wise. I don't know the man himself. The raging alcoholic by the end of his life, kind of a curmudgeon, maybe not as much, but his writing and his writing style, I definitely was very influenced by. I read On the Road when I was a freshman in college and was just like kind of blown away, like wide-eyed blown away. I got it on the dollar rack at the Strand and was like, oh, this is a book I'm supposed to read. I'm like, whoa. Like people write like this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, college, like I read so many interesting and like different authors and different movements and different countercultural like factions and stuff like that I never would have seen otherwise. I'm struggling to think of any that really like continue to stick these days anyway, like currently.
Yeah.
There's some people that'll keep their books on the shelf, but these days I think like my favorite poet is Frank Stanford, and I've been reading also a lot of like Diane Wachowski, who has a book that everyone loves the title of, Dancing on the Grave of a Son of a Bitch. Which is just awesome. I've been reading a lot less fiction than I used to. I've been doing a lot of photography myself, film photography, and I've been just looking at a lot of photography books. I kind of eat those up these days. All different. That's, like I didn't go to art school, so like I'm really just kind of like getting them one at a time. A lot of the like classic people like Stieglitz and Edward Steichen and people like that, and getting into my approach to photography is a little bit more like atmospheric, like I would say like for a popular reference like Sally Mann-ish. She's also great. But yeah, and then like writer-wise, I don't know. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction on and off. Again, with like the folk history stuff and folklore. I see like a collection of folk tales. Like I'll skim through it if nothing else. And I don't know.
Nice.
I think Frank Stanford is a big influence though, writing-wise.
Yeah.
Right now, for sure. Frank Stanford. I have a book of his collected poems, and I just like flip it open, and we'll read a few. It's super beat. It's like an ex-library book that was like split. I bought it online for myself because it was the cheapest copy, and when I got it, it was like split in half. Like it was like kind of like it was kind of gross. I had to clean it and glue it back together, and like I love it. It's one of my favorite books that I own.
Nice.
And it's rugged. It's a rugged copy for sure.
I love stuff like that too.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Is as a bookseller, a lot of books too that I keep is usually because I have to put them back together. A lot of the time.
It's like I that one on the shelf there. I put that together. I gotta keep that, and something special about.
Yeah, it's like too ragged to sell, and it is special too. It's like I had to put in some effort to keep this a book and not turn it into recycling.
Yes. I just had two other questions, more just about, in general, about the North Fork.
Okay.
Just now, with being with growing up here, but then coming back out here and working out here, living out here, what do you enjoy the most about living and working on the North Fork?
Um, Living and working on the North Fork. I mean, you know, the community, like having a pretty close knit community. Everywhere you go, there's people you know, basically.
Yeah.
See familiar faces all the time. To be totally honest, like when I moved back here the first 2 years, I wasn't like doing very much aside from being at home, going out to find stuff to sell, and like that was it. In the last couple of years, I've made so many friends, you know, so many acquaintances and stuff that like, you know, again, like everywhere I go, I'm so glad to like see people that are familiar and friendly. That and being able to like go places. It's funny, like the flip side of that, I love seeing people, and the flip side is I also love being able to go places where there's no people. Like straight up, like, you know, I think that was something that by the end was really grating for me in the city, being from Southold and like being very enamored with like nature and going to the beach and walking through the woods and like all that sort of thing, even as a young person, and then like spending almost 10 years in the city where like, you know, there was only one place I lived in the city, which was all the way in Inwood in Manhattan, like the northernmost tip, where there's a park that's like the only natural woods left in Manhattan, and you could walk in that park for a while and it would be like silent, and that was very nice. But like for the most part, it's like, you know, kind of like the constant, and not that I don't like people or something like that in general, but like having to kind of deal with everybody else's rage in public, like people getting really angry in public, and like I saw people like beating their kids, and like I see people like, you know, screaming at each other, and I see people like just being real, you know, not even seeing other people that are next to them and like helping them if they're in trouble and things like that. It can be very grating and like kind of demoralizing in a way. That's something that, like, you know, I definitely don't miss about the city, and like being here again, like being able to like know your community and being able to help each other out and stuff like that, and being able to go walk in the woods and take pictures for like 3 hours or something, and not just be by yourself, you know.
Yeah, that's something you can get pretty. You don't have to go far.
Don't have to go far, that's for sure. It's like, you know, like the last place I lived in the city, it's like was right on a main drag, a very, very busy street in Brooklyn. And if there wasn't people like peeling out down the street all day, there was people like beating each other up outside my door. You know what I mean? Like it was just not. This wasn't fun.
Yeah.
So yeah. Not to say that that's everywhere or something crazy like that. I'm not like a night and day type of person that way, but I definitely I like to go visit the city. Yeah. But I don't live there anymore though.
Yeah.
So.
And just in terms of the future of the North Fork, you've noticed change, and just your thoughts on what you might hope for the future of the North Fork down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the sense of community that I'm experiencing right now sticks. You know what I mean? Like it's always been, even as a place that there's a very large percentage of second homes and things like that, it's always been pretty community oriented, and you know, I just hope that doesn't go away. You know, I want it to continue to be like, I would like to see it continue to be a place where everyone's on a, you know, like a first name basis type of thing. And a place where people who do, what some would consider like basic things, like, you know, being a waiter or a waitress or a bartender or a, you know, librarian or a farmer, or like all these kind of like normal jobs. I feel like there's a threat of people being priced out of here even more than they are now, and it's pretty brutal right now, and for a lot of people that have even been here for a long time, as long-term renters or things like that, like getting things swept out from under them. I would like to imagine that at some point, you know, it'll reach a plateau where like everyone can remain and be happy, and it doesn't turn into like, I don't know, a mall.
Yeah.
Basically a figurative mall, not a literal, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
Oh, definitely.
So community, yeah, hopefully that's all I really hope for, is the community to stay as a real like community, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and I think I just asked if there's anything else you wanted to say or discuss that we haven't talked about.
I don't know. I feel like I've been talking my head off. I mean, I normally, this is the problem, is I'm not like a super social person, and I don't talk a lot. And then it's like, now I'm given the opportunity to sit here and be asked questions about my life. I'm like, yeah, let me talk to you for like 2.5 hours ad nauseum, like word vomit. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing, but no. I mean, thanks for, again, this is really cool. Thanks for having me. This project seems super awesome. Yeah. I'm glad somebody's doing it, and like stoked to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for taking the time to come in today and share your story. And it was really nice to talk with you about a lot of the things you're working on, especially with your business.
Likewise. Yeah. No, again, thanks for having me. Hopefully I can keep the business around. It kind of goes with the last thing I was saying about rising cost of living. You know what I mean? But hopefully I can stick around. I would sure like to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 85 with Nicolas Amara. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.